Another fire alarm's going off. There's always something. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carla Itzid, and today I'm going to share with you guys my crazy birth story. And I feel like everyone says every birth story is crazy, but this was definitely crazier than my first one, than my first baby. So I'm definitely gonna say this one is the crazy one. And it actually was just kind of like the start of it all was actually the craziest part. And yeah, there was a lot going on there. So if you're interested in seeing how I pretty much had to fight the hospital to have this baby, then just keep on watching. So I did a birth vlog where I attempted to kind of document the whole birth process and everything, but it ended up being a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So I ended up not being able to record much of the actual birth once we were like actually going to have this baby. So there wasn't a lot of that, which I was kind of sad about, but I mean, it is what it is, right? So I want to kind of give you guys, like, fill in all those gaps that we're missing in that birth vlog. So really, I think this birth story starts the week before. So the week before, I actually went to the hospital because I had been experiencing some moments where there was definitely some decreased fetal movement, and that was freaking me out. And I didn't know if it was just me. Like, you know, I feel like a lot of pregnant women kind of deal with that, where you don't want to be like, have people think you're exaggerating, you're kind of just crazy. But I didn't experience that with my son, my first baby. So I was definitely getting kind of concerned with that. And then eventually I was just like, you know what? I gotta go to the hospital because it just didn't feel right anymore. And maybe I was tripping, but maybe it was actually something serious. So I just went to the hospital. I get to the hospital, and as soon as I get hooked up to the monitors, she is ready to party. She's moving and kicking, and I'm like, thank you, baby, for being okay. But like, what the heck? Why? What is happening? You know, like, why would that happen? And I was talking to the doctor, and I said, you know, this isn't like one time this happened today, so I came to the hospital. Like, this has been the past couple days. Like, there's just been moments where it was like definitely a decrease, right? And at this point, I was like a day away from like 39 weeks. So the doctor did tell me that he was kind of contemplating inducing me. Here's my error. So I wasn't picking up on the social cues, I guess. I thought that as the doctor was kind of going through like his mental thought process of whether or not to induce someone, because he had his residents there, I thought he was just kind of telling them kind of the process, right? And at the end, he was just like, so, you know. And I almost kind of like he was waiting for me to say something, but I mean, I'm not the doctor, right? So I didn't know that I could have been like, okay, then yeah, induce me, and that he would have been cool with it, you know? Because honestly, that's what I would have preferred a week even before I actually had my baby Emma. So yeah, so I wasn't picking up on those cues. But eventually he was just like, well, do you feel okay to go home? And I was like, well, I mean, I can, she's obviously kicking, and if you're telling me everything's okay, then yeah, I mean, I feel good to go home. So he was like, okay, well then you're free to go home, and just keep monitoring it, and if anything happens, then just come back. When we left the hospital, and at that point when we were at the hospital, I had my bags, my parents came and took care of Dal. Like, we were kind of just like, if this is it, then we're ready to go. So it kind of made it a little bit more frustrating when Tyler told me, like, do you realize that he was kind of waiting for you to be like, okay, then induce me. But I wasn't picking up on it because I think we both would have just rather have done that at that moment, since we were pretty much already there, and I'd been induced with my first one, so I kind of know how it goes. And even though each pregnancy is different and each birth is different, I kind of had an idea of what to expect, at least, right? Anyway, so that's a week before. I just leave that knowing, well, I mean, I could have been induced, but it's fine. You know, I'll just keep an eye out and make sure everything's okay. Okay. A week later. So it is Monday, and I went to see my OB, and I kind of told her the story about me having gone to the hospital. And she said, you know, I don't feel comfortable when a patient tells me that they have decreased fetal movement. It doesn't feel right. So she's told me if that happens again, I need you to go and take it seriously if they kind of talk about inducing you, you know, and like possibly say yes. If you're okay with that, my recommendation would be to induce you. And she's like, actually, let me go check if they have any openings for a scheduled induction. I don't know how that works really, but I guess there's only a certain amount of scheduled inductions you can do a day, or I don't know. So she checked, and there was nothing available for today or for Monday or that Tuesday. So she told me, you know what, but if you experience any other issues, just go to the hospital. And she was going to be there on a Wednesday. So this is Monday, but on a Wednesday she was going to be there so she could even deliver the baby if it was in the next little bit that I ended up going to the hospital. So she's like, just keep an eye out. Okay. So that's Monday, and I finished off the day just kind of thinking about it. Then Tuesday, I think the night before, I had experienced one of those moments where I felt decreased movement. And I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to keep this, like, it's just like a paranoid feeling because you don't know 100% if everything's okay. So I was like, you know what? My doctor's okay with it. I was almost induced a week ago, so I'm definitely okay now. I'm just going to the hospital. So she had mentioned to me, she's like, look, if you go to the hospital and you say, look, I don't feel comfortable, I just want to be induced. She's like, there's like a 99% chance that they will induce you. There's only like one potential doctor that might give you a little bit of a tough time. But any doctor, if you don't feel comfortable and your baby's safe and healthy and like you're good and you're this far along, like there's not really a reason to not induce you except for just the idea that it's, you know, always better to just have your body go into labor. But with this worry, and the benefits of just having the baby outweigh the possible risk, it's just better, right? So I kind of went along with that, and I just said, okay, I'm going to go. I'm just going to try and really push for them to induce me because this is just, it's too worrisome. So it was really nice, and this is kind of where you guys saw in that birth vlog of just kind of getting ready for that day. So because it was essentially scheduled without it actually being scheduled, you know, it was planned. So I was able to like clean and organize. I got Dallin together. I took him over to my parents, and everything was really nice. It was really smooth. Everything went well. The whole time I'm knowing though, I might not be able to get induced. So there's a slight chance, there's like a 90% chance I probably would be fine. But, you know, for my luck, I would get that doctor that wants to like push just your body going to labor naturally, you know? So we get to the hospital. So this is the part you guys don't see also. So we got to the hospital, and I just told him, look, I've had more episodes of decreased fetal movement, and it's really scary, and I don't know if everything's okay, because when I get here, everything's fine, but then I go home and I experience these moments where it doesn't feel right. I can't get the correct kick counts, so like I'm just scared, you know? I'm like, okay, we'll check you. So I actually ended up going right to the same bed that they took me. So in the ER, they have like the separate labor and delivery ER, I guess. And I actually got the same bed there as well. So I'm there, and the nurse is trying to put the monitors on me to obviously start hearing the baby's heartbeat, pick up on any contractions, and she can't find the heartbeat. That was very scary. And I'm like, I can tell she's having a hard time because she just keeps moving them. And eventually, like, I'm realizing she's having a hard time. And then she says, maybe I'm just going to switch out the monitors and get, like, a different one. That's when I was like, I just looked over at Tyler like, babe, I'm freaking out. You know, like, what? And she can't. So she gets a new one and she still can't get it. She's like, I'm hearing a heartbeat, but it sounds like yours. I just like, I can't really pick up on it. And now I'm like freaking out, you know, because obviously I don't even have to explain myself, right? So then they start bringing in more nurses to try and put them correctly. Then they start calling like someone who might know how to do this better. Just like, I don't know, and more residents start coming in, and I start crying, you know, because I'm like freaking out. So my heartbeat starts to like go crazy. My blood pressure starts going crazy, and now it's just a whole mess. Because I'm almost like full on panic attack mode while they're still trying to get the baby. So they start to realize, okay, I think we can't hear the baby's heartbeat because it's meshing with yours, because yours is so high, because you're freaking out. I'm like, well, what do you expect? You know? So they start trying to get me to calm down. And as my heartbeat starts to kind of calm down, we can finally hear baby's heartbeat normally. What a freaking relief, you know? But that was very, very scary, especially as more nurses and residents start coming in. Like, that was very, very scary, and that lasted a few minutes of that, so that definitely got me like very, very hyped up. So anyways, once that happens, I'm like, I'm not going home because something must be happening. Something's happening, and it just feels that way, right? Like, I just feel it. I can't explain it, and maybe there's no scientific medical reason, and we can't pick up on something, but something's not right. So they start monitoring me. They're like, okay, well, because your blood pressure just like spiked, and I have like a history of migraines and all this stuff, they were thinking like, do you have preeclampsia or something? And I'm like, I don't know. At this point, I don't know, right? I mean, I don't think so. I haven't had any issues while pregnant like that, and well, that related to that. At this point, I'm being monitored for a little while. Baby's doing fine. Once they were able to find her and her heartbeat and everything, they even brought in the ultrasound machine or whatever, and they were just trying to check and make sure everything was okay. And they're like, well, everything's fine, so I think you could probably end up going home. We're going to monitor you for a little bit more. When they left after telling me that, I turned to Tyler. I'm like, I'm not going home. I'm not going to have an episode like this at home and be like regretting that I ever went home in the first place. So he was like, yeah, we can't leave. Like, this is happening too much. This isn't the first time this has happened. So we're not going home. Okay. Well, this is where we start having to kind of argue a little bit with the nurses and the residents, and eventually what are they called? The residing doctor? I don't know. The main doctor on shift at that time. We went through every level of nurses and residents and doctors, and of course, it was that doctor that my OB had told me would probably give me a hard time. Yeah. So they were just saying, well, I mean, everything seems fine. I think you're okay. You know, just make sure you take a note of the fetal counts and fetal kicks, and make sure they meet a certain number, and everything I already knew. And I just kept telling them, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable going home. Okay, well, what don't you feel comfortable with? You know, we could give you, write you up something so you know what to look for. Like, I've been through this already, you know, and here I am again. And at this point, I'm 39 weeks. I was already, like, good into 39 weeks. Like, it doesn't make any sense, you know? And they're going back and forth, and she's... At this point, I'm like crying, telling them I don't feel comfortable going home. This is going to happen again at home, and I don't know. I don't know what to do. Do you want me to just keep coming back? Because in that case, I'll probably be back tonight, because this will probably happen again at night. And they're kind of pushing back. Well, you know, if you get induced, though, and you're not ready, like, it could be a really, really long labor and complications. Like, I knew that, but at that point, because I had been induced before, I kind of had a little bit of confidence in the induction process. And at that point, the possible risks that I felt like could occur with me and my body, they were like nothing compared to something actually going wrong and waiting longer. So I kept pushing. Tyler and I kept pushing back, and we said, we don't feel comfortable. We don't feel comfortable. And eventually it got to the main doctor, like I said, and she did come in. And I told her the same thing as I had told all the residents they had sent in at that point. I don't feel comfortable. This happened too much. You get it, right? So then I hear some doctors and stuff talking outside of the little like cloth curtain thing. And I just hear one of them tell the doctor that she just doesn't feel comfortable. She feels like, something can happen, and she just doesn't feel comfortable going home. So, and then I hear the doctor say, so she refuses to leave. And I'm like sitting there like, I mean, because it just sounds so much worse, but like, yes, I'm refusing to leave, but because like 2 seconds ago, you guys were having a hard time finding the heartbeat, and I've been here before, and it doesn't feel right? So then I hear the doctor say, okay, well, tell her that this will be a selective induction. And make sure you tell her it's probably going to be a really, really long labor because her body's not ready there. It's not ready yet. Like, it's not there yet. And all the stuff right, that I had already heard. And just that it could be a possible cesarean if it gets too long and all that stuff. So eventually, they took a little while. So then the resident came in, and she went through everything all over again about all the possible complications and all the logistics behind doing a selective induction, and kind of see if I would like back out of it last minute. But I was so determined at that point. But I will say, because I kept hearing it over and over again, it did kind of start getting into my head about the possible complications. So at first, I was very confident in saying, this is what feels right for my body, and this is what feels right for me and my baby right now. But then after hearing it over and over and over and over again, it did start kind of making me nervous. And I did get a little bit of like anxiety after essentially signing that I was okay with the induction. I remember they left, and I kind of started crying because like it almost made me feel like guilty for making that decision, even though I felt very good about it a little bit ago, right? But I was like, at this point, there's no turning back, and this is what I'm going to do. I have signed off to be induced, and remember, this is all happening Tuesday. This is all still the same day. At this point, it was probably around like 6 p.m. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to get a room ready for you. So already I could sense like a little bit of a different vibe from the residents at that point. And I get it. I mean, I was kind of arguing with them and trying to go against their medical advice, I guess. But it's just like, every doctor is different, because this same situation happened a week ago, and the doctor was like ready to induce me at that point. And then it just happened to be that these sets of residents and doctors just like didn't feel that way. So that's why I really feel like it should just be at some point the mom's intuition and the mom's feelings, and just like whatever she feels is right for her and her baby do need to play a part, because clearly same situations, 2 different sets of doctors and residents, 2 different opinions. Anyway, so a nurse comes in to tell me that there is a room ready. I was not really about her kind of vibe. Like, it almost seemed like you just wanted to get induced, like you're taking up a bed. I don't know. Like, it was just, maybe it was also in my head, because like I mentioned, I was already starting to feel kind of guilty and a little anxious with the whole situation. So it might have been my own insecurity from that making me feel like she was just like, because when she walked in, like I'm wearing that robe thing, the hospital robe. So the back is open, you know, and even though you kind of try and tie it off, like, it's still like kind of unpredictable, you know. And she's like, "Are you good to walk?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay." I'm like, "Well, can I get another robe to put backwards or something? Because I don't want to walk across the hospital in the hallways like with this." She's like, "Okay." And she got another, like, already it was like I was not feeling the vibes, you know. And it's just making me feel worse about it because it just kind of felt like the nurses were just over it. Hold on, baby. So we get to the room, and the first thing they tell me is that they need to do the COVID test. Oh my goodness. Those tests are terrible. They it is such a terrible feeling. Like, anyone who's gotten it, I mean, you have to say, at the very least, it's not pleasant, but I bet a lot of people will say that thing hurts. It just felt like they were just scratching my brain with like menthol or something. It was not pleasant at all. So I get the test, and they said that the results would be back in around like 2 hours or so. And also, with an induction, when your body isn't fully ready, they kind of do it in 2 steps. So the first step would be giving you Cervidil. So that kind of preps your body, so it kind of gets your cervix to the right point, so that way Pitocin can actually be effective and kind of get you ready for labor, right? So Pitocin is what will actually cause the contractions, supposedly, right? So that's really what will kind of kickstart labor. And Cervidil just kind of preps you for labor if your body's not ready yet. So that's at least how it was with Dallin. So when I heard that was kind of their thought process for this one, I'm like, okay, I got it. Like, I know kind of the process. So you get Cervidil, and then 12 hours later, they take that out and they start giving you Pitocin. So eventually came in and they gave me the Cervidil around 8:30, I want to say. 8:30, 9 o'clock is when they gave me Cervidil. So at that point, I think it was either right before that or right after that. Tyler and I hadn't eaten since way earlier in the day, so we were pretty hungry. Now, again, like I mentioned, they normally come and take that out 12 hours later. And with Dallin, all that I really felt when they gave me the Cervidil was just kind of normal cramping, like nothing too bad. I ended up sleeping that night, and I got like a full night's rest. So because of that, I was like, okay, well, if I want to eat, this is probably a good time to eat, because obviously, like, you want your food to digest, and I don't want to be throwing up everything. But I knew it would be fine because it wouldn't come out till 12 hours later when Pitocin would actually start. So we ended up ordering some food, and luckily Tyler was able to go to the door to pick up food. So he wasn't allowed to leave the hospital. If you leave the hospital, you're not allowed to come back in. But somehow, which honestly didn't really make that much sense to us, but we weren't complaining because obviously we were benefiting from it. But he was able to go to the door to get food from a person from outside and bring the food in. So we got some food and we ate some food. And within about 2 hours or so is when I started kind of feeling some like cramping kind of starting. So I want to say I probably got, we ordered food before I got the Cervidil, and then the food got there once I already had the Cervidil. So, but yeah, so we finished eating. I didn't even finish my food because I just said, you know what? I don't know. I just like, I got a feeling not to finish all my food. I just ate enough to just kind of like get rid of my hunger. But the cramping was kind of starting to get kind of annoying. So I just didn't finish my food. So I'm laying there, and I started realizing as the time is passing that these cramps are getting kind of intense. And I remember with Dallin, it definitely was not like that. And the nurse is also not the kindest in my eyes. Again, I'm still feeling a little bit anxious. So, yeah, so I just like, I don't know. I didn't want to ask too many questions because I guess I felt in my mind like the nurse was kind of annoyed with me. Maybe because I did decide to do the induction or something. So I just like, I wasn't asking too many questions. I was just trying to be really nice and just like not, be more of a bother than I had to be. So I kind of start getting ready for bed. So, you know, take my contacts out, put my glasses on, and get a little bit more comfortable. And Tyler makes his infamous dad bed, right, in the room. And the whole time, the cramping is still there. And I started telling Tyler to do some B-roll, so you guys see some of that in the birth vlog. You guys see some B-roll going on. We're just kind of having fun, and he is like great at trying to make me feel better. So he was able to he definitely was the one that kind of calmed my nerves, and the guilt and the anxiety I was feeling was going away, because I knew I already had the SUBTITULOS for a couple hours, and I was getting some cramping, but the baby was fine. Her heartbeat was totally fine. So kind of my worries were going away, because I felt, you know what, it'll be fine. This is going to be like Jalen, and it's going to be fine. So fast forward a couple more hours, you know, maybe like midnight to 2 in the morning. I'm not sleeping, because these are actual contractions, and I'm starting to remember them. But I had those type of contractions with Dallin when I first got Pitocin. So I'm at the level now of like first hour into Pitocin, essentially, and I haven't gotten Pitocin yet. So I'm just a little bit confused. But I'm just thinking, okay, well, I mean, I'm further along in pregnancy, so it could just be that things are lining up, and I'm just getting contractions anyways, you know? So but yeah, so I'm getting those contractions a little bit more intensely, and they're definitely hurting. Definitely hurting. I'm just breathing through them, and I started realizing that if I just like shook over and over again, and what I ended up calling the penguin dance with Tyler. So I would just tell him, penguin dance, penguin dance, penguin dance, and then that would mean that a contraction was coming, and I would just start kind of like moving back and forth. And if I moved and just kind of like wiggled, for some reason I was able to cope with it a little bit better. Who knew? Who knew? I don't know. There's my tip for any pregnant women during labor. Try wiggling. I don't know. So I was wiggling, and that would kind of help, but they were intense, and it was starting to get to a point where I couldn't really breathe that well through them. You know, it was like getting tougher to breathe through them, even though I knew I had to. Well, here's another weird thing about me. When I start kind of getting in a lot of pain, now, real like fully in labor pains, that's another story, right? But when I'm kind of in a lot of pain, I don't really like telling people, and I don't like people knowing that I'm in a lot of pain. So at this point, Tyler is sleeping, and I'm not telling him that I'm like having real contractions, like I can't breathe contractions. And so I didn't wake him up. I just kind of let him rest. And in my mind, I also thought, I'm like, okay, well, if she ended up coming a little bit sooner, it'd be better if just at least one of us was rested, you know? But I'm like in actual pain. So that's like, what, 2 in the morning, right? And I haven't slept. I haven't slept because it just got more and more difficult to just sleep because it was so painful. 4 a.m., my water breaks, okay? And I couldn't take it anymore, and I just told the nurse, because I did have to call her, and I just said, hey, like, I'm so sorry, but, because I had moved, like, some of the padding that was under the bed, because it was just so uncomfortable. That was another thing. Just pregnant, I was uber uncomfortable, way more than when I was pregnant with Dallin. Like, so uncomfortable to lay down, and, like, sit down. So having to be in that bed, I was like, oh my gosh, I hated it. So anything to make me feel a little bit more comfortable I was doing. So I ended up moving all like the padding off of the bed, and of course my water breaks. So now like it was just like a mess, you know. So I feel really bad because now I gotta call that nurse that I already thought I was annoying. So I call her up and I'm like, hey, you know, I'm so sorry, but my water broke, and like I had moved that pad, so it's, you know, like it's everywhere. And she's like, okay, I'll be right there. And then I do end up waking up Tyler. I'm like, babe, my water just broke. It's like, what? You know? I'm like, I'm in a lot of pain here, you know? And so then I eventually, so I go into the bathroom to kind of clean up a bit and like change out of what I was wearing. And meanwhile, the nurse was really nice and cleaned everything up and stuff. And I come back out and I tell her, I'm like, so at what point will they come and check me? Because like I'm in a lot of pain. Like I feel like I'm really, really contracting. She's like, they're not going to come until the 12 hours are up. And this is 4 o'clock, and I got the Cervidil at like 8:30, right? So I'm thinking, oh my gosh. Like, I not knowing how far along I was, because I was like, I've definitely been dilating at this point. There's no way that I'm still at the 1 that I was when I got the Cervidil. There's no way, because there's no way that these contractions haven't been doing anything. So I just told her, I'm like, I really feel like I'm actually dilating, and it would just be nice to get checked. She's like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure they're not going to come until the 12-hour mark. I'm like, okay, fine. so I'm like, okay. So at this point, I can't sit no more. And this is a thing that I did with Dallin also when I was in labor with him. During contractions, cannot lay down. I cannot lay down. I have to be standing up. If not, oh my gosh, it hurts so much more. I don't know why. So for me, I had to stand up. Once that water broke, whoo, it just like the pain level got so much more intense. And at that point also, the nurses like eventually rotated, and I just told her, I took advantage. I'm like, I really need to have a doctor check me, because I feel like, I know I haven't even gotten 12 hours of Cervidil, but like my water broke, and it's just like really, really intense right now. And I'm saying this like really, really fast in between a contraction, because I no longer can talk during contractions. And so she's like, okay. And she was really nice, and I feel like I was scaring her, because she was like uber sweet, and I think I was just so concerned, but I was taking advantage of like feeling like I could talk to someone at that point. And my husband also told her, like, she normally doesn't exhibit pain until she's like really, really in pain. And I can tell right now she's like in a lot of pain. And I don't remember this until like halfway through the labor with Dallin. So I told her, I'm like, I'm probably like I'm like, you know, halfway there or something. So like, okay, so they bring in a resident. The resident that walks in is the same one that told me that, you know, my labor was probably going to be super long. And, you know, she's like, we might have to do a cesarean. If you start taking too long, we're going to have to just do the C-section, and all this stuff, and like made me feel really bad about it. And she's the one that walks in to check, and I'm like, ew. You know, because if at this point I've just been exaggerating, and it's like at a 1 or a 2, I'm going to feel really, really dumb. So, I just told him, like, you know, I'm sorry, I know, like, it's not 12 hours yet, but I just, like, this feels like halfway through the labor, like, when I was laboring with Dallin. So, she checks me, she's like, oh, you're right. And she said either 4 or 5 centimeters at that point. And I was like, I knew it. In my head, I'm like, I know I'm not crazy. I know that I wasn't exaggerating. I knew that I was definitely laboring. So, but it was kind of surprising that it was getting that painful that fast, because it was pretty painful up until my water broke. But once my water broke, like, whew, it was like skyrocketing, like the pain level. So she had come in probably like 30 minutes to an hour after my water broke. And at that point, like I said, at that point I was like in a lot of pain. So I started telling the nurse, like, okay, well, the thing is, I do want an epidural. I do not want to do this naturally. Like, I want an epidural. And, but I don't want to get it too soon. If I'm like 4 or 5, whatever I was, I don't want to get it too soon and then start slowing down this progress. And she's like, yeah, okay. Well, what you could do is, like, you could do morphine to kind of, you know, calm the pain a little bit. And I'm like, do I want to do that? I don't know. But, you know, I was just scared, because this wasn't Pitocin that I was getting. This was just my body. I was scared that the epidural could slow it down, because with Dallin, I got epidural, but I was on Pitocin. So it did not slow it down at all. Like, he was here pretty fast. So I just didn't want to jinx it. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just do morphine then. They're like, okay, but if you get morphine, like, you can't get an epidural until an hour after that. So I was like, I don't care. Okay, we'll do that. So eventually they come in, and I think I got morphine around 6, like right before 6, so we'll say 5:45, I ended up getting morphine. And like I said, they told me to have to wait an hour after getting that before getting an epidural. But I told her, I'm like, okay. But they told me with morphine I had to lay down. And I really didn't want to do that because I just knew it was so painful. And I was like, unless this morphine like totally gets rid of my pain, it's going to be so painful to lay down. Okay, fine. So I get the morphine. First of all, when I first got morphine, I felt like all of this was on fire, like straight fire. I like freaked out and I called for Tyler because I'm like, oh my gosh, like it just felt like my tongue was like swelling or something. It was the craziest feeling. Ugh, like it was very, very odd. Just like literal fire is what it felt like with like swelling. I don't know. It was so strange. So I get the morphine and maybe it works for like a second, right? And by a second I mean like a couple minutes. So it starts working for like, I don't know, 5 minutes. 1 second. So once the morphine kind of kicks in, it like maybe, I guess I could say it takes the edge off, but I don't know. I'm just like still in a lot of pain, but it's starting to it was even difficult to see if I like felt a little bit of relief. But the fact that I was laying down, like now thinking back, I'm like, the fact that I was able to just even cope with laying down during contractions, it definitely means that it helped a little bit, right? But I'm still in a lot of pain, so I tell the nurse, like, please, like, the second that this morphine is done and I can get an epidural, please, can you please have it so that the anesthesiologist is, like, ready to go? And she's like, yes, like, don't worry, like, when the hour is up, you'll get epidural. I'm like, okay, cool. So we're on the same page here. So I just remember that while I was, like, I had the morphine, still felt the contractions. I was laying in the bed and all I could do was just do the little wiggle thing to try and like help with it, but like it was still so much pain. And I remember, I mean, obviously I was a little bit out of it, you know, but it felt like I had my eyes closed the entire time. So maybe I even fell asleep in between contractions because at that point I was pretty exhausted. I hadn't slept either. So I feel like I remember having my eyes closed the whole hour almost. I had my eyes closed, I think, and I just like dealt with the contraction. I could just feel like it was like the amount of pain was just, and I kept telling Tyler, this isn't working. This is not working. This is not doing anything for me. Like, I need that freaking epidural now. Like, I can't do this. And so, yeah, so I'm getting close to my hour. I'm like, oh, thank goodness, because I'm like in tears, obviously. It's just like so much pain. And then, okay, so I'm back. We have little Emma who is joining us now. Say hello. Oh, pinky down. This is little Emma. We're telling the story about when you came to this world. And we just got to the good part before my memory card was full. So she's going to be joining us for the rest of the story time. Or we'll see. Okay, so for the second time, my battery kind of cut off, and then the memory card and all that stuff. So anyways, so we actually got to like the big part of the birth story and like the main part. So at this point, like I had said, I was getting right to the very end of the hour that I had to wait after getting the morphine for the first time, even though it literally didn't feel like it was doing much at all. And I'm like just obviously in tons and tons of pain. And then I start feeling tons and tons of pressure, I guess. Oh, bless you. And it literally feels like I'm about to give birth. Like full on, like Emma's about to be born. And I start kind of freaking out. And I start telling, babe, something's happening. And at this point, like just, what that would have been like, so 2 hours prior, I was only like 4 or 5 centimeters, wherever it was, which I don't really remember. And so I was like, I didn't know what was happening because I didn't even think that it could be possible that it would be that she was going to be born. So I just tell Tyler, something's happening, something's happening. So he quickly calls the nurse and he's like, I don't know, she just says something's happening. So like the best way I could describe it was just like tons and tons of pressure, I guess, building up. And so I guess the nurses probably knew what that meant. So in rushed residents, the doctor, the nurses. My nurse had just switched again at that point. I don't know, that seemed like really quick, but for some reason it was another nurse at that point, and I'm like freaking out, and I'm starting to think that they think that Emma's about to be born. And all I can think about is I don't have an epidural. I am so sorry about that. Literally my battery died and then my memory card was full. It was a whole thing. So the lighting is going to be completely different. But anyways, we literally left off at the main part of the birth story. So all of a sudden I see residents, the doctors, nurses, a new nurse. I just tell them like something's happening. Like it just, I don't know. But I'm just like, I need that epidural now. Like I literally couldn't take it anymore. And my new nurse, she comes up to me, she's like, hi honey, like I'm your new nurse, I just switched. Like how crazy would it be, like you just start a new shift and all of a sudden you get a call, something's happening. Like, I'm so sorry. But she's like, so she tells me very calmly in my ear as I'm like freaking out and all these doctors and nurses and everything coming in, she's like, honey, I know that you wanted that epidural, but you don't have any more time to get it. The baby's gonna be here now. When I tell you that I looked into her eyes, into her soul, like, what? No, like no. Because the thing is, I never planned on having a natural birth. I think, now retrospectively, of course, like I think about it, I feel like I could have handled the situation better if I would have known that that's what was going to happen, but because I had completely different plans, and that's my bad for assuming it was going to go as planned, I wasn't mentally prepared for it. So I'm freaking out, but she's like, you can do it. Okay, so hopefully this is the last time the camera cuts off. So anyways, the nurse is in my ear pretty much telling me like, you can do this, you've made it this far without the epidural, all you gotta do is get this baby out. So I start freaking out. The pain is very, very intense at this point. And you're like, okay, you just gotta push this baby out. Like she's totally there. So I look over for Tyler because in the midst of everybody coming in, like kind of just crowding everything, Tyler ended up like kind of far away from me. So I looked for him, like I was like, I need him right now, So they bring him over and I'm with him, and they start telling me, these guys start pushing and push this baby out. When I tell you that ring of fire is legit, I thought I felt it with Dallin because the epidural kind of wore off by the time he was born, but not having anything, oh my gosh. So yeah, so the doctor would just tell me, okay, if you feel the contraction, just push. Eventually I was just gonna just push without the contraction. I just need to get her out because that fire burning feeling, I was like, I can't take this. So I just did everything to just get her out. And before I knew it, at 6:54 a.m., little Emma was born. And thank everything in the world that I could finally get her out because, oh my goodness, it was so intense. But it's insane that the second that they put her on you, you just literally forget about all the pain. I mean, yes, technically, the second you have her out, you wouldn't feel that ring of fire anymore, but you're just overwhelmed with the feeling of having her. Tyler did tell me that when the resident was giving me the baby, that the cord was wrapped around her neck, and even the main doctor was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Like, look at what's happening. Get the cord off," you know. Um, so I'm glad I didn't like, pull her towards me. But yeah, that was a scary thought. Um, but she was healthy and adorable, and I do remember that when they first put her on me, she wasn't crying. And also combined with the fact that the cord was around her neck, it was a little bit of like a kind of feeling. But the second you hear the baby cry, you're like, whew, all good. But then I remember the doctor telling me once Emma was already on me that there was I was still bleeding a lot. So they kept pushing on my stomach to try and get everything out. But oof, I remember that being so, so painful. But I've heard worse stories of, having to avoid hemorrhaging and all that, and like what they got to do. So I'm glad that all they had to do was just from the outside, just push down and try and get everything out. But I do remember the doctors telling me like there's a lot of bleeding, because every time that he would push, I would just like tense. I was like, relax, relax. Like, I can't relax. It hurts so much. But at that point, I'd gone through the entire laboring process. Like, I can't handle that. But I think I also I wish I could have just had that moment with Emma and just enjoyed it all. But instead, I was like having all these doctors like push down on my stomach and on my uterus and stuff. So yeah, but anyways, once she was on me, all of that just went away, and I no longer thought about the pain. A little bit after she was actually born, it did hit me like I just did that. I just gave birth naturally. That was insane to me because it's never something that I wouldn't say that I didn't want to happen. I just like never really gave much thought to it because I was like, well, I'm not the type of person that like feels like I need to do this because it's all natural, and like I don't know, I don't have that kind of I don't need that so much, but I was totally fine getting an epidural if that's what I had to do, even though I'm terrified of needles and I had such a traumatic experience getting the epidural with Dallin. But I still know, I was like, but I don't think I could have handled the contractions, right, and birth. But now it's kind of crazy to think that I did do that, and honestly I am very proud, because that was insane. That was very, very intense, very painful. Like, that's even an understatement, right? And I wish, kind of, like, if I would have known that I was going to have a natural birth, to mentally prepare myself, because I think I probably could have handled it a little bit better if I would have mentally prepared. But obviously I didn't. So, kind of funny note that like she was born before the 12 hours were up at the Servidale, So that one nurse was like, they're not going to come. I'm not going to ask before 12 hours. I'm like, she would have been here if I wouldn't have just like, pushed forward. Like, the contractions are happening. Sorry, my camera cut off again, and I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore. But that is the birth story with little Emma. It was incredibly crazy. I never would have expected it to have gone the way it did, but I'm very thankful that it did, because not only was she healthy and fine and I was good and healthy, I got to experience a natural birth, and I don't know if I would do it again. But at least I know that if I was in that situation, if we ever wanted to have more kids, I can handle it because I handled it the first time, right? But yeah, it was really, really crazy, but obviously thankful for how everything ended up turning out. So thank you for joining me in my birth story, and just recording this video was a struggle. So yeah, and thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed the video, definitely give it a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe for future videos, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.